Hey you, chill the fuck out. We're talking about a children's Christmas movie and nothing more. Don't let the title misguide you. Unaccompanied Minors is a very strange but very enjoyable Christmas movie, and though it's full of silly goofs and gaffes, it actually has some pretty relatable characters and themes. But since that's like 90% of all Christmas movies, why should you bother watching this one? Well, grab yourself a glass of eggnog, and let me tell you. I actually found this movie in a pretty strange and contrived way. You see, when I was young, I didn't have access to the internet, but I did have a DVD player, and a library that rented out said DVDs. And on those DVDs were commercials for other movies that were also on DVD. Man, I miss the DVD era. I really do. Simpler times. And one of the advertisements in question was, in fact, an advertisement for this movie, Unaccompanied Minors. And I really wanted to see it. The advertising was quite good. And definitely not because I was a small gullible child who bought everything that anything on a TV sold him. I love the opening scene of this movie because it doesn't drone on longer than it needs to, got some good music behind it, and it gives us just a little bit of basic insight to our main characters. And who is our main cast? Who will we follow on this adventure of holiday hijinks? Well, we have Charlie Goldfinch, played by Tyler James Williams, who is the living definition of a bro moment. Grace Conrad, played by Gia Mantega, is that typical rich white girl who's really good at reminding you how high class she is, and just that tad bit insufferable. And then we have Donna Malone, the daughter of the late and great Post Malone. Played by Quinn Shepard, Donna Malone is the you touch me, you die, but she isn't kidding type of person. Then there's, we'll get back to him. And last but certainly not least, our main character, Spencer Davenport and his little sister Catherine. Spencer's that teenager who tries to fit in with the gang, but the gang doesn't really accept him, they just tolerate him. They even make a separate group chat, so, they can make plans without him. Kinda like me. The general plot of this film is that our 5 lead characters get stuck in an airport on Christmas Eve, and they are hunted relentlessly throughout the night by the head of passenger relations, Mr. Porter, who's played by Louis Black, if I might add. Why are they being hunted, you may ask? Well, being in a place like this would make anyone want to get the hell out, if you ask me. But in light of a bunch of kids being stuck in an airport on Christmas Eve, the staff makes the decision to send them all down to the wonderful, comfortable Hoover International Lodge. Except for our main characters, of course, because if they did get sent down there, then we wouldn't have a movie. And because they decided to break out early and break a lot of rules and cause a bunch of property damage. Mr. Porter isn't really in any sort of wrong here. The kids broke out of where they were supposed to stay because of policy, then proceeded to cause property damage to the airport, as well as probably a lot of annoyance to both staff and passengers alike. So he doesn't let them go down to the lodge with the other kids because, well, they broke the rules, which is totally fair. And not to mention, Mr. Porter's already in a pretty bad mood because his flight and vacation to Hawaii got canceled. First vacation he's had in 15 years. I would be so angry and foul if that happened to me. I do not blame this dude at all. God, you're getting old when you start to sympathize with villains in realistic settings like this. But let's do a proper introduction for our final protagonist, who is, oh, you thought he was evil. Gotcha. Beef is actually just a big fuzzy soul with a lot of love and compassion in his heart, and we're gonna get back to that love and compassion later. So Spencer gets separated from his little sister because she followed the rules, stayed in the room, and got sent to the lodge. So now she's all alone on Christmas Eve. Good job, Spencer. But that's obviously unacceptable, and trying to actually be a good older brother, the dude's like, okay, we gotta get down to the lodge because I'm not gonna leave my little sister alone on Christmas Eve. Great motive. Now we get to the middle act, where all the juicy, fun, and ridiculous hijinks happen. These 5 pull some absolutely ridiculous, just completely seemingly impossible maneuvers. And as Mr. Porter says later on,
who trained you kids? The Navy SEALs?
I mean, they pull some absolutely like Solid Snake level stealth maneuvers, especially with their first one, where they call the front desk to get their guard pulled away, like, hey, request this person at the front desk. Their guard leaves, he locks the door. Then they decide, okay, he's gone, let's hide on top of the door, on a little space on top of the door, then he's gonna come back, think we're gone, then rush out the door. And then they freaking keep the door open with a broom, and no one knows. That is an absolutely insane plan, and it is a miracle that it worked out as well as it did. Then when they escape, they discuss what their actual plan is gonna be, and Beef is all like, Don't worry, Spencer. I'm gonna get your sister a Christmas tree. And this man goes on like an Undertale level amount of determination type of quest. First, this man somehow escapes the airport entirely without being noticed. Then he walks, yes, he walks all the way to a tent that is selling Christmas trees in the middle of God knows where, gets the Christmas tree, walks all the way back to the airport, and somehow doesn't get spotted by anybody. How? But I have a theory. Beef can teleport. In their initial breakout, there's a sequence where they all commit Grand Theft Auto using one of those airport cart things they used to move passengers around. Donna, the absolute legend, goes around and picks all of them up to prevent their capture. Right after Charlie gets into the cart, Beef just appears inside the cart. They never stop or anything. He's just there. He isn't there in this shot, but he is there in this one. So it's safe to say, Beef teleported out of the airport to go get the Christmas tree. He had to walk all the way to the Christmas tree because he was on cooldown. Then, after he got the tree, teleported back inside the airport and avoided detection entirely. Getting back to the plot though, right after Beef vanishes, Charlie determines that the best way to get to the lodge would be right outside the unclaimed baggage warehouse. He claims that security is thin this time of night. How would he know that? Well, turns out he flies out of this airport every single week. What child is flying that often, and for what purpose? In an attempt to make it to the warehouse, they enter this room full of machines and conveyor belts and all sorts of stuff like that that's intended to automatically send unclaimed luggage to the warehouse. Unfortunately, Mr. Porter starts catching up with them and they're all forced to hide, and yeah, no, that's not gonna work. I'm sorry, but hiding there, no, he would have seen them. And Charlie, who's been a genius thus far, proves to be not all that bright. And this man makes the executive decision to hide inside of a luggage case by contorting his body to fit in there. And I think you all know where this is going. This sequence of them trying to chase down Charlie as he's yeeted around the conveyor belts is just so fun to watch, and it's so ridiculous. And it must be so hot. It must be boiling hot inside of that luggage case, which Charlie definitely did not think about beforehand. And it also doesn't help that this man is being ragdolled around a room that, you know, he's probably gonna get a few broken bones out of this one. But luckily, it does lead them straight to the warehouse, where they do a bit of pillaging, dancing, and a little bit of self-reflection. That is until the GOAT, the GOAT, Mr. Porter shows up. I have not talked about this man nearly as much as I should have. His first in-person introduction to our cast is just so based on so many levels. Man is sitting in the shadows in an empty room, just waiting for them. And then when they show up, he steps out of the darkness and presents himself as a villain. What I love so much about Mr. Porter as a character is he tries to be intimidating and menacing and badass. But he's surrounded by completely incompetent buffoons, so he usually ends up looking like a buffoon himself. And I love characters like that, where they try to be this menacing, badass, intimidating figure, but then they do something real stupid and it removes any intimidation that might have been present. So to escape Mr. Porter's wrath, the kids decide, hey, let's canoe down this snowy hill to get to the lodge. And Mr. Porter follows them in a goddamn kayak after delivering this beauty of a line.
Last one down the hill is a fired apple.
My God, you can just hear the amount of rage and anger and seething hatred in his voice. It is beautiful. They manage to outmaneuver Mr. Porter and his band of useless security guards and make it down to the hotel. To find Spencer's sister, they divide and conquer. And Charlie, being a idol and icon for nerds everywhere, pulls a Star Wars move to outmaneuver Mr. Porter. And as a result, Mr. Porter gets gamered by this hunk of a man. But even after they find Spencer's sister and he delivers her present, they still get brought back to the airport and they're thrown in jail cells meant for actual criminals. And Mr. Porter, you know, he's just such a cool guy and a man of honor. He says, if you somehow find a way out of these rooms, I will be the first person to congratulate you and admit defeat. The scene that follows is actually a really nice scene with all of our characters sort of talking and reflecting on their adventure and how close they've all become. Using some walkie-talkies they found in the warehouse, they sort of talk about how they all might be able to relate to each other because all of their parents are divorced. Spencer speculates that maybe that's why they all work so well together, because none of their families were meant to be together, so they naturally just go to seek out others who understand. Grace is the only outlier here because her parents aren't divorced. but it's not all sunshines and rainbows for her. She describes her personal relationship with her parents as them divorcing her, so she has like a distant relationship with her parents. And I'm certain that there's many kids out there who would be able to relate to either of these situations, maybe even both of them. And I really hate to break up the sentiment here, but Donna says what we are all thinking in this scene.
I'm really depressed.
Jesus Christ, ain't that the truth, huh? But Spencer isn't about to give up after leading his friends into literal prison. He devises a plan. The walkie-talkies they found in the warehouse have little perfectly conveniently circular camera screens on them. So here's the plan. Here's what they do. They mount the walkie-talkies right next to the security cameras that are watching them, and then record themselves just walking around the room a few times. And then simultaneously, what they all do is unplug their security cameras and then tie the screen on the walkie-talkie to the front of the camera, tie it on there, plug the cameras back in. Mr. Porter doesn't notice a thing. And then, of course, escape through the air vents because, nope, we're not doing that kind of joke. But damn, maybe they were trained by the Navy SEALs. Even I couldn't think of something like that. But after they escape, they find the room where all the Christmas decorations were being held. I forgot to mention, Mr. Porter isn't really a big fan of Christmas. So the four of them decide to spruce up the airport for Christmas because there's all these passengers and kids stuck here, so we might as well make it a little bit festive, right? But right before they get started, Beef teleports back into the airport carrying a huge Christmas tree. Beef the real MVP of this film. And then we get a nice little montage of the five of them working together to make the airport much more in the Christmas spirit. And at the end of this little montage, Mr. Porter keeps his word and he's like, you know, do what you gotta do. And then he and Spencer have a little talk about why Mr. Porter doesn't really like Christmas. And we learn that 5 Christmases ago, Mr. Porter's wife left him, which, yeah, I think that would kind of make anyone just sort of associate Christmas with bad memories. I think that's a perfectly valid and understandable line of thought on his part. But our main cast isn't soulless, and they don't really see Mr. Porter as an evil guy, you know? And they give him a little present because it's Christmas, and it's this little Hawaiian-themed snow globe, and it's just really cute and really, really like genuinely thoughtful. And clearly this little gift and little act of sentiment had an impact on Mr. Porter. Right as the sun starts rising and all the passengers start waking up, they take everybody to the nice big display they made with the Christmas tree. And as they're showing it off and showing like, hey, you know, we might be in a crappy situation, but it's still Christmas and we're still trying to make it nice for everybody. Right as they're showing off their big reveal, Mr. Porter shows up in a Santa costume and starts handing out presents. That is so based. And it is just such a nice conclusion to this film. Everybody grew in this film. Every character, including our antagonist, grew a little bit, and that's really nice. There's a lot of side plots and other storylines I didn't really mention here because if I talked about every single one of them, we'd probably be here for like 3 hours. But hey, that leaves some entertainment and mystery for all of you to discover, because if you haven't watched this movie before, I highly recommend checking it out. It is such a fun film. It's funny, it's self-aware, it has relatable characters, it has great slapstick humor, and some genuinely good moral lessons. But what are some of your favorite Christmas movies? I would love to have some discussion in the comments below about what some of our favorite Christmas movies are and what you think of this one if you have seen it before. And maybe if you haven't seen it before, you go watch this movie, then come back and leave your comment and we can have a discussion. It'd be really cool. And if you enjoyed my rantings on a Christmas movie from 2006, then consider dropping a sub. Remember, we're going for 10,000 subs by the end of the year. If we hit 10,000 subs by the end of 2024, I will get my first tattoo in celebration. And I'll publicly humiliate myself in a secret unknown way to you because I have a little bet with someone who I'm not going to expose here, but if you want to see me publicly humiliate myself as well, then definitely hit the sub button. And if you really like the way I make my content, then consider becoming a channel member. Not only do you get a bunch of exclusive rewards, but you also directly support me in the process. You get all sorts of perks like a cool badge next to your name, early video access, access to the few director's cuts I've made, exclusive emojis, all sorts of cool stuff. Shout out to the members, absolute legends. But that's gonna do it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, have a good day, everyone.